Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Biden is vetting Amy Klobuchar to be VP. And there are many in the Black community that are speaking out about this. Now, I did a live stream on Amy Klobuchar a few months back, and she has a horrible track record with the Black community in Minnesota. There were shootings. There were cases of police brutality. She put an innocent Black man behind bars. And Amy Klobuchar pretty much let the cops get away with everything when she was DA. The whole time she was the DA in Minnesota, not one single cop was punished for shooting people in the Black community or any type of brute force, excessive force they use. There was also an incident of a Black mother that was trying to reach Amy Klobuchar because her son was shot by the police. Amy would not talk to her at all. And that's how she treated the Black community the whole time she was DA. She did not want any communication with the Black community. But she was a big cheerleader for the cops. So if you remember back during the primary, when it was in Minnesota, Black activists were demanding that Amy Klobuchar drop out of the race because they said she was unfit to be president, looking at her track record of how she did so poor with the Black community at the time when she was DA. So many are not happy that Joe Biden is vetting her right now. And they're saying that if Joe Biden goes with Amy Klobuchar, he can pretty much bet on the fact that he will not beat Trump at all. Because her pick will definitely keep a lot of Black people from voting for Joe Biden. None really should be voting for him, but really should not be voting for Joe Biden. Yeah, Amy Klobuchar was one of those people. She was a big lover of the grand jury. And that is exactly what she used to get cops out of everything when she was the DA. So that being said, let's get on to this story that came out in Politico. Black activists warn Biden, don't pick Klobuchar as VP. This is May 23rd, 2020. Amy Klobuchar performed abysmally among Black voters in the Democratic primary. It's haunting her now as Joe Biden decides on a running mate. The Minnesota Democrat has the governing experience and ideological profile to mesh well with Biden, and she regularly appears as a surrogate and a fundraiser for him, raking in more than $1.5 million for a single event she headlined. The pair have a warm relationship, trading phone calls when her husband was hospitalized with COVID-19, and they didn't tangle publicly during primary. But more than a dozen Black and Latino strategists and activists warned in interviews that selecting Klobuchar would not help Biden cite Black voters and might have the opposite effect. Klobuchar would risk losing the very base the Democrats need to win. Exactly. They can't win without the Black vote, y'all. Okay, so Allison, founder of She the People, which promotes women of color in politics. They pointed to her poor performance among non-white voters during the presidential primary, as well as her record as a prosecutor in Minnesota. It is not yet clear how much the opposition of activists matters to Biden. He made clear that the electoral politics of his pick mattered less than choosing someone who could be a governing partner and step into the top job without worrying. But the vocal contingent of Black Americans and Latino distractors, many of whom say they would prefer Biden select a Black woman as a running mate, is unique to Klobuchar. Elizabeth Warren, another top contender for VP. I don't like Warren either. So it comes from her performance in the primary, her weakness in being able to motivate them. So, the activists were saying they didn't care for Amy Klobuchar's performance during the presidential primary. The engagement and the enthusiasm of Black voters is going to be a difference maker in this election. And the concerns about her role stems from the degree to which she resonate or not with those core constituents. Earlier this week, Biden confirmed that multiple Black women are being considered for vice president. Those often named Senator Kamala Harris, former gubernatorial nominee Stacey Abrams, and Florida Rep. Val Demings. Other Midwest option like Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer have also been mentioned. But for many of these operative, Klobuchar symbolizes a strategic division within the Democratic Party, whether to focus on winning back white Midwest voters who flipped to Donald Trump in 2016, or activating voters of color who were not excited to vote. She represents that tension. The Washington Post op-ed this month urging Biden to select a woman of color as VP, 7 Black strategists and activists called out Klobuchar, warning she would only alienate Black voters. Okay. Referring to her record as a chief prosecutor in Minneapolis, they added, a choice such as Senator Amy Klobuchar, who failed to prosecute controversial police killings and is responsible for the imprisonment of Mayan Burrell, will only alienate Black voters. That's right. Like I said, when she was DA, not one single cop was ever punished for doing anything to folks in the Black community. And there were a lot of police killings going on there, and she wouldn't punish not one cop. Not one. Angela Rye, oh boy. A Democratic strategist and the former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus, who also signed the op-ed called Klobuchar a non-starter. Klobuchar boosters counters that Donald Trump will drive out the Democratic base no matter what, and that the key Rust Belt states that Democrats have to win. And, so she's really weak. They're saying she's really weak among Black voters, and I can understand why. Let me just go down because I don't want to quote Angela Rye. Klobuchar has been working to improve her relationships with minority activists and politicians since she dropped out of the presidential race. She endorsed a slate of racially and regionally diverse candidates, in down ballot races. She worked with Stacey Abrams, another VP contender, to promote a vote by mail bill, which was endorsed by Voto Latino. She also wrote a bill to expand broadband access to students at historically Black colleges and Hispanic serving institutions. And she's participating in a virtual town hall hosted by the NAACP on how the coronavirus is disproportionately hurting Black and Brown people. Really? How come you weren't like this when you were in office, but now that you are really a non contender at this point, all of a sudden you want to dive in and do all this stuff? Where were you years ago when the Black community needed you? People were getting shot unarmed. People were getting brutalized by the police, and you use grand juries to get the cops out of everything. What a joke. Okay. So, the DNC conventions in 2008 and 2016 hosted Klobuchar with a group of influential Black women leaders. Half she knew, half she didn't, and people walked away with a favorable impression. The primary results illustrate the Klobuchar's failure among voters of color. In South Carolina, she won 1% of Black voters, even though they made up the majority of the Democratic primary voters in the state. It was the lowest total for any of the presidential candidates on the ballot. In Nevada, Klobuchar received 4% of the Latino vote, the lowest share of any presidential candidate other than Tulsi Gabbard. Nationally, Klobuchar regularly polled in the low single digits among voters of color. Could she have done more? Absolutely. A South Carolina based Democratic consultant said. But she knew where her bread and butter, and that started in Iowa. She was taking the race as it comes. But Biden, too, was recently warned about not taking African American voters for granted. On Friday, he apologized on a conference call with Black leaders for comments he made to the Breakfast Club radio host. If you have a problem, this is what he said, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't Black. This is what he said. This is what he said. Klobuchar's prosecutorial record, and it's talking about how she handled the Burrell case, a Black teenager. And, there were many during that time that said she put him in jail and he was innocent. He was innocent, but she prosecuted the case and put this innocent teenager behind bars. And a lot of people could not get beyond that when it came down to Klobuchar. Okay, so it's pretty much saying for the rest of the article, they are urging him to pick a Black woman as a VP candidate and not Klobuchar. So, y'all, tell me what you think. I don't think Klobuchar is a good choice. I think Klobuchar is a horrible choice. I think Amy Klobuchar needs to go back to being a senator and not run for anything else. And I'm really surprised that, you folks in Minnesota, y'all did not get her out as senator at this point. She really shouldn't even be a senator, in my opinion, with her track record. But y'all, please tell me what you think about Joe Biden vetting Amy Klobuchar for VP. Then what's the point in swapping out Trump and Pence? Just keep them in, what's the point? Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.